Hi, this is Dominic Zangrilli.
And this is Gabby Gomez, and you're listening to GotTechED, the podcast.
With your hosts, Eric Guise and Nick Johnson.
Welcome back, everyone, to GotTechED, the podcast, episode 7. In this episode, we're excited to talk to our very first student guests about what Teacher Appreciation Week means to them. Our question of the day comes from a former student, now teacher, who wants to know more about the ever-changing landscape of grading. We'll end the show by sharing an amazing resource called the Technology Integration Matrix, followed by our next Tech Battle Royale. Hey everybody, welcome back. In this episode, we're going to be talking a little bit about teacher appreciation in honor of Teacher Appreciation Day, which was this past week. I know in a recent episode, I talked a little bit about some of the things that inspired me to be a teacher and become a teacher. When I was in high school, I had a chemistry teacher, actually Mr. Hodge, who was so exciting and just made this science so interesting. He was always showing us really cool things about different demonstrations and just sort of gave me not only a love of chemistry, but also it made teaching look so fun that I kind of decided that that would be something that I wanted to pursue in my life, and that's sort of what brought me to the profession. And I think everybody has a story like that. We've all got at least one or two teachers from elementary through high school that really inspired us, put us on a path, or let us kind of clued us into something that we're interested in or inspired a passion that maybe we didn't even know that we had. Guys, I know you've talked about some people yourself with similar stories.
Yeah, I talked about a coach that really influenced me, but if I had to throw a teacher out there, I would definitely go with my 6th grade elementary teacher. His name was Larry Kennedy, and he just had a way to keep me in check. I was one of those kids that was very squirrely in my seat. I remember doing some weird things, like I came in from recess and decided I wanted to sit in the back of the room next to the fan with my shirt off.
Oh, yeah.
Those types of things.
I used to try and sit in a box, like an old paper box behind the door. It was weird.
Yeah, it is very weird, but the way that these teachers handle us when we're acting that way can really make a difference and draw you in. For me, very hyperactive. Sometimes I couldn't control what was coming out of my mouth a little bit. I just remember he had these little sayings that kind of brought me back. He even once put me in a tin trash can and rolled me down the hallway. I loved it.
That's awesome. Well, we've all got stories like this, and we thought it would be kind of fun on today's podcast in honor of Teacher Appreciation Day or Teacher Appreciation Week, whatever it is, to actually bring in some students that Guise and I have had, some we haven't had, and kind of hear their side of the story. So today we have with us Dominic and Gabby, and I think we'd like to ask them some questions, right?
I'll shoot first. First of all, no pressure. You don't have to say anyone's name if you don't want to. If you want to give them a shout out, go for it. One of the biggest things is kids relate with teachers in different ways. So what are some traits or what are some characteristics that your most memorable teachers have that really separates them from everyone else?
For me, I think what makes a great teacher and what teachers have connected with me have been those that have been able to influence me either in the classroom, outside of the classroom, those that give personal experiences to what they're teaching, and those teachers that are able to get to know you on a personal level, that you could come into their room and sit down and have a conversation about anything and everything if they have the time for it.
So it almost sounds like you appreciate a teacher that's going to treat you as an equal and not like talk down to you in any way. You guys are on the same level. You feel like you have a conversation. You're comfortable talking with them, approaching them, things like that.
Yeah, that sort of stuff, like mutual respect between the teacher and student is pretty important. So when that's there, great connections are easily formed.
Cool. Gabby, what about you?
Well, I've really enjoyed classes and been able to connect with the teachers that have been asking questions and not only teaching the content in classes, but they've been taking time to just talk about different points in life and just taking time in classes to talk about different things and not be lecturing to us the whole time.
That's interesting. That's something we touch a lot on in this podcast, is just not lecturing the whole time, trying to change it up, do some different things. I have a question. I've always kind of wondered this as a teacher. Do you guys know, like, can you tell when a teacher is kind of going out on a limb to try some new things in class just to sort of get away from that lecture style? Is that obvious, or is that not so apparent from the student point of view?
I mean, I think as a senior now, I've been through 13 years of school, you can kind of see when a teacher is comfortable with what they're teaching or they're having trouble.
Right.
So I definitely feel like as an audience, you can tell when they're trying to try something new to get class's attention or to help in a certain subject. So it's apparent.
And do you appreciate that?
Yeah, for the most part, you appreciate it. I mean, yes, there's trial and error, so they're working their kinks out, especially young teachers. Yes, they just went through schooling, but they don't have the full experience that a lot of older teachers have, so they're just trying to work out their kinks to see what fits best for their class.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. It's kind of cool having them here, asking them questions about teaching. And I don't know why we didn't do this while we actually...
This should be the whole podcast. I got like 20 more questions.
I got a lot of questions as well. But for me, I remember my 10th grade English teacher, she was very vulnerable. She said, hey, we're trying something new. Hopefully it goes over well. I'm looking for feedback and let's see how it goes. Do you have teachers that come out and show their vulnerability? You know that they know their content. Let's be real about that. But if they're going to try something new, especially with all the technology that's coming out, we didn't have this technology when I was in grade school. And I was one of the first ones to have a cell phone my senior year. And it was the size of a sneaker.
Yeah, it was like a brick in your pocket.
Well, you couldn't put it in your pocket.
Yeah.
It was like one of those, I don't know, space phones in the sci-fi videos.
It's giant.
So do you like it when teachers just flat out say that they're going to try something, or would you rather them just do it and not worry about the vulnerability piece?
Well, I think I really enjoy I appreciate when teachers tell us before they're going to try something new, and it also gets to show us how they're trying new things. When they're vulnerable, it makes us, I guess, relate to them more because they can show a side that's not just strictly, oh, I know the content. It's like them trying new things and trying, being more personal with us.
Yeah, I think kind of what you're saying is we're all just people. You know what I mean? We're showing up every day to try to do a job, and you guys are showing up every day kind of because you have to. But it's the same. You're just students trying to do your version of that job. So to kind of show that side of we're just going to try something new, it sort of is relatable to everybody. So
we talk a lot of technology on this podcast. I'm interested hearing about what you guys are doing while incorporating technology into the classrooms.
Yeah, is there some, not to cut you off, but is there some project or something or anything recent with the Chromebooks or that your teachers have done with tablets or phones that really sticks out in your mind as super impactful and better than, more of a traditional kind of sit there and do a worksheet sort of thing?
I think for a lot of the sciences, it works out better with different technologies and stuff. For math, it's yes or no answers pretty much. But I know with physics, the camera on my cell phone, the stopwatch, and all those sort of applications that the phone has makes it easier for us to do the work and easier for the teachers to help us when we need help because they know what we're using and they're like, maybe try this way. Or we show them a video of what we did and they can critique from there. So
cool.
All right, Gabby.
I was also going to say for physics, before we start new units, we do a lot of conceptual stuff and we do these simulations, and it helps so much for me to understand what we're going to go into and understand what's going to happen during this unit. It's easier to visualize it once you're using the Chromebooks and using these different applications.
I guess now's the time if you guys have anyone that you want to give a shout out to, or if you just rather just hold your peace, we could hold our peace here.
I'm going to shout out Aaron Oldfield.
And Gabby's good.
Oh, I'll say shout out to Miss Rich.
All right, so we have Miss Rich, Aaron Oldfield, math teacher and business teacher, marketing. So Oldfield, Miss Rich, you've been shouted out.
You can follow GotTechED outside the podcast at gottech.com or on Twitter at WeGotTechED. So today's teacher question of the day is an interesting one. First of all, it came from a former student that both Guise and I had in class years ago, and she's now actually a teacher in our building, which is pretty cool. The question was, it was tricky. It definitely threw both of us for a loop. We actually disagreed a little bit on one of the aspects of this, so take a listen.
Hi, my name is Leah Hopkins, and I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the differences between standards-based learning and competency-based education.
Okay, so I swore up and down that standards-based grading and competency-based were the same thing. Guise tells me that they're very different, so we're kind of going to hash that out in front of you guys to compare the two and hopefully clarify exactly what they are. We're also going to start back with just traditional grading in general, since that's what most people know. Anybody who's gone through the school system, the way that you were graded is most likely traditional grading, which pretty much just means you were given an A in chemistry, or for your 6th grade class, you got a B by the end of the year, right? Just that sort of one summative grade that wraps up all the work you did. That's what we mean when we talk about traditional grading systems. So this really emphasizes the teacher more than anything else. Some of you may have heard the phrase sage on the stage, which means the teacher's running the show. The teacher is communicating all the information of a very teacher kind of centered system where all of the work you do in a course is summed up pretty much just in one number. You got an 83, even though there might have been some things you did really good at and maybe other things you didn't do so good at. Skills, knowledge, all of it. The problem with traditional grading is that it doesn't really give an accurate picture of what a student knows or what a student can do. So standards-based and competency-based kind of help account for some of those shortcomings.
You kind of hit on it, but the traditional teacher's role is to be that person that prescribes learning activities, and everything is controlled by the teacher.
Right.
Where the student's role is to be an absorber of information. Now, like you said, there are problems with this, and one is it doesn't take student interests into consideration at all. And that's very problematic because we've pointed out through theories, multiple intelligences, and through research that students learn very differently from one another.
Right.
By doing the traditional teaching practice, you're not meeting the student's needs, which should be one of our main goals as a teacher.
Right. As you transition into this newer, I guess, although I think, didn't you tell me standards-based has been around for a while, actually?
It has been around for a while. I was looking up some articles to try to figure out how I can simplify standards-based versus competency-based. I was finding articles from the earlier 2000s.
Okay. I say newer just because I think I know actually our district is starting to switch over from a traditional style to standards-based grading. Right now, I believe it's happening in the elementary schools, and it's kind of slowly moving up through the grades. So to me, it feels new, but I guess it's been around for a bit.
Yeah, but when you really look at what they're doing at the elementary school level, and I did look at it a little bit, it's really competency-based grading.
Okay.
But with holding on to some of the standards-based holdings of that.
Well, let's go through just to, because it's probably, if standards-based is new to us, it might be new to some of our listeners as well. So I think the big difference between the traditional style that you're familiar with and standards-based is that, let's just take a student in, say, an English class as an example. At the end of the year with a traditional style, they just end up with a B or a B minus or whatever, or some kind of percentage for that whole class. But in standards-based, it's a whole lot more complex. Within that same English class, there's a whole series of grades. So they might get a percentage or some kind of a letter grade, so they still have a grade, but it's not just one grade for English. It's one grade per standard or per learning objective or whatever the school or teacher or district or state decides to call it. There's specific learning goals where students get different grades in, all under the umbrella of that one course. So I think that kind of sums it up a little bit nicer. And again, the idea is just to help provide more accurate information for a student actually looking at their grades, like, okay, I don't just have a B, I've got a B for these objectives, maybe a C for these, so I'm not doing as good there, so that's maybe where I need to do some more work and put in a little bit more effort. Does that sound like a fair statement to you?
Yeah, and just to take it a step further, you have the teacher went from that person that was, the sage on the stage to the person that is going to be the curator of resources. They're going to be the person that helps the students with feedback. In this system, feedback is more important than it ever has been because students are taking control of their learning. It's student-centered approach. They're making goals. The teachers are helping them make goals. What they do is they get all these assessments that allow them to manage and see progress of those goals.
Okay.
These grades for each standard allows the student to know which standards he or she needs to work on.
Right. I think it's just a shift towards an actual focus on learning. It seems funny to say that about schools. You would hope that a school's focus is always learning, and I think for sure it has been, but the standards-based and competency-based stuff just kind of recognizes that the feedback that we've been giving to students for a long time doesn't really let them understand perhaps what they've learned and what they didn't learn. So we're just trying to sort of bridge that gap now. Let's circle back around, I think, to competency-based, because when I look at the two things, standards-based versus competency, they seem pretty much the same to me. I know there's some differences in there, so we'll get into that part a little bit next. Both of them focus pretty heavily on making it more student-centered. I can say that. Does that sound good?
They both definitely make student-centered approaches a linchpin in the way that they function. Absolutely.
Right. But I think it seems almost like the competency-based is more of an educational style, whereas the standards-based is just how you grade within that.
Yeah, so for standards-based, you're still going to get those letter grades. You're still getting the A,
Right.
B, C, D, F, and you'll get it for that standard. So what they might do is they might have 20 standards there, and during that marking period, you, the student, got 12 A's, 4 B's, and 2 C's, and the next thing you know, you look at your report card and you got a B+.
Okay.
Okay, but it's line items like your taxes, right? You have your standards there, you have a grade next to it. So it's a little bit more complex. I know teachers that do standards-based grading,
Sure.
but they still end up with a percentage somehow, some way.
Oh, yeah.
They use their own formulas to figure that out.
Yeah.
That way, the students are still getting feedback based on standard, but they're also still fitting in with the way that the school grades with the percentages.
Right.
Now, with competency-based grading, it's not so much about seat time. It's not so much about how many hours or how many classes you have. It's about meeting those competencies, and it's based on a rubric, just like standards-based grading. However, the rubric looks a little different. We're no longer getting A's, B's, C's, D's, and F's. We're now getting unsatisfactory, proficient, or advanced proficient based on each competency. Now, this is a little different. The wordage, the jargon could be a little different. I've seen mastery as the top column
Right.
instead of advanced proficient, but you're still working towards those. Quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4 really doesn't play a factor in it anymore. They have a certain amount of time to meet these competencies so they could go on to the next level.
The word you used in there, mastery, I think is important. We haven't mentioned that yet. Students advance through most of these things at their own pace. When they master one competency, that's when they move on to the next one. They don't follow the pacing set by the teacher, sort of like on a day-by-day basis as you would in a traditional kind of school setting. It's more just, okay, I figured this competency out, where I met all these standards at a competent level. I mastered those, if that's what you want to call it. Now I move on to the next one when I'm ready and when I've accomplished that.
Another thing that we have to kind of bring in with the assessment piece is that both standards-based and competency-based look at assessments. There's assessments in both of them, just how we look at them is a little different. In standards-based grading, you have selected assessments that are used for the grading purposes. This is going to be our benchmark. It's going to be used to prove this standard. For competency-based education, your formative assessments are now the norm, and they show progress. Every single day, in some way, shape, or form, a student should be getting some type of an assessment, whether it's just like a do now where they plan their short-term goals for the day, or their exit slip where they say, I'm writing in my journal today what I accomplished.
But they should be formative, right? This is all just to provide feedback on their progress, pretty much.
Right. And the brilliance behind all this is we're getting more tech savvy as a teacher population. Therefore, we're able to find new ways in order to formatively assess students to give them feedback right there and then.
Right. And I think that's to bring it full circle to us and our podcast. That's why we like this question, because technology, we think, is one of the best ways to really facilitate this effectively. If you really want to emphasize learning and progression based on mastery of a competency, I can't think of a better way than technology, whether you're using Google Forms or some other kind of learning management system. A student answers a bunch of questions. It's automatically graded. They see what they did right and they did wrong instantly. And it's just a really great way to emphasize not getting a grade, but what did I know? What do I don't know? And then what are my next steps to fill those gaps in?
So we talked a little bit about the formative assessments. Well, now there are still summative assessments as well. And this is determined when the students feel comfortable. They'll set their own summative assessment. And it could be something from a electronic portfolio,
Right.
where the students have to show what they know. It could be a standard test. It could be a test that the teacher made up, and that could be used for this.
Sure.
It's a mixture of both, but formative is very, very important when it comes to competency-based education.
So what's a good way to wrap this up for people? I know traditional can be thought of as like the far, if we want to call it on the far left, let's say, usually at least super teacher-centered. You swing over to the far right-hand side with standards-based and competency-based, more student-centered. Are they similar but different? Is that how we're going to sort of put a bow on this?
Yeah, they are similar but different. One thing we didn't touch on that I really want to throw out here before we wrap this up is feedback and how important feedback is.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
In both standards-based and competency-based, there are types of feedback that you could give. And the quicker you could give this feedback, the better, because that means less time is wasted. If a student is waiting to get feedback back, or if a student gets feedback 3 days after he's done with the activity and the feedback is negative,
yeah, it's no good.
It's no good.
It just makes them feel bad, and they don't actually get anything out of it.
Yeah, it's a regression instead of progression. And
Right.
progression is motivation. And motivation is engagement. Engagement is student learning.
Whoa, did you just make that up right now?
It just rolled off the tip of my tongue.
That was awesome.
So similar but different. I think they're both effective if they're implemented the right way. I'm not going to lie. It's going to be a challenge to go from traditional straight to competency-based grading.
It's tough. It's tough because it's a big shift, but there's a lot of benefits. I hope, Leah, we helped answer your question, and anybody else who listened, maybe you learned some new things about some cool new ideas.
So Nick and I are both in our home stretch of our schooling. We make it a goal of ours to try to improve our craft and try to become lifelong learners, and we really take that to heart. And through our studies, we've come up with some really cool strategies along the way and different theoretical approaches. And one that I want to share this week is the Technology Integration Matrix, which was created by Florida Center for Instructional Technology, FCIT.
Yes. So this is one of the neatest things. This is one of the greatest things that I think we've come across, either for the podcast or for our own continuing education. It's really awesome. They call themselves a matrix. Really, to me, it's kind of set up like a big giant table or a rubric even, where a teacher or a school or a classroom can rate themselves on their use or their integration of technology into the classroom. And it's got a lot of really interesting components. You can just give this a quick Google to find it for yourself and check it out. We'll also have the link in our show notes. We're going to start to describe this, not every piece because it's really super involved, but just to kind of give you a flavor of how the TIM or TIM is set up. Going along the top axis, so the horizontal axis, there's 5 characteristics that are associated with levels of technology integration. So this would be like how well or kind of what stage a teacher or a school is at in the process of bringing technology to the students. So I'll read those 5 titles just to give you guys a sense of what you should be looking at. It starts on the left-hand side, which I guess would be the lowest levels, with just with the word entry. And entry is just teachers beginning to use technology tools for the first time. And as you move to the right from there, it slowly adds more and more integration with adoption at the next level, adaptation, infusion, and on the highest level would be transformation, which is the teacher encouraging a lot of innovative use of technology tools that facilitate a lot of higher order thinking, where the students are running the classroom and facilitating more of their own learning than actually relying on the teacher. So it kind of lets a school or a teacher rate themselves somewhere along that matrix.
Yeah, let me kind of tie this in with something that most of us know, and that's SAMR, the SAMR model, because that's really what's going across the top here. Instead of having 4 categories like SAMR, which is substitution, augmentation, modification, and redefinition, we have 5. The entry level is like the substitution. It's just switching out something from before.
Right.
The adoption is like the augmentation, the adaption is like the modification, and infusion and transformation are like redefinition. So as you go from the left side, it's more of a teacher initiated. So the teacher is bringing the technology in, prescribing the technology, telling the students how to use it, when to use it, why to use it, and all that. And as you start getting to adaptation, infusion, transformation, it's becoming more student-centered. So once again, it's going along with our personalized learning, our blended learning, our student-centered learning approaches.
Right. And I think it's just helpful to kind of let a teacher sort of evaluate themselves. If you think you're using a lot of technology and you're doing and integrating it in a successful way, that may be true, but it would be interesting to see where you fall along those levels to maybe try and improve yourself even further.
Right. And I think now we should probably talk about the other part of the matrix.
Sure. So then going down the left-hand side are some different descriptors. These are the TIM refers to them as meaningful learning environments, and it might make better sense when we read them off to you. The first one is active. Then it moves down from there with collaborative, constructive, authentic, and goal-directed. My interpretation of these is it's more the things that the students are doing in the classroom, sort of like the student perspective on the different levels of technology integration. Does that sound correct?
Yeah, it's the environment, how the environment's set up, how the students fit into that environment, how the pedagogy fits into that environment, and then the technology is considered. But going down the left side, we're familiar with Bloom's taxonomy, some of the 21st century skills. These are really blended into these categories, which then is going to make up our matrix. So if we pick one of the top 5 going across the top, say entry, and we also say it's collaborative, we go down to that matrix there and we would click on it. And when you would click on the actual live integration matrix, it would come up, and I chose the collaborative learning entry level square. And what this matrix does, this interactive matrix, it's pretty cool. It tells you what the student role is, what the teacher role is, and what the setting looks like. And for the collaborative learning entry level, the students primarily work alone. When using technology, students may collaborate without using technology tools. So we said this is more of a substitution if we were combining the entry level with the whole idea of SAMR. The teacher directs students to work alone on tasks involving technology. So we're still prescribing things as a teacher. The setting is arranged for direct instruction and individual seat work. So this is traditional lecture-based teaching. I guess the goal behind all this is to try to work your way to the right. Of the matrix.
Yeah, definitely. And like Guise talked about, I think the coolest part about this, as long as you're looking at the online version of the matrix, they do have like a printer-friendly like paper copy you can print out, but you can pick any intersecting point, any intersecting version of these levels or the different environments you want. So I think you were just going through some of where collaborative intersected with the entry level. I'm just going to randomly pick another one. If I wanted to see if I was at the adoption level, which is our second highest stage from entry, and within the active environment, which is whether students are engaged using technology as a tool in more of a passive way or an active way, I could click on that and get a whole bunch of descriptors for that exact intersection, active learning, adoption level, to try and judge myself there or gauge how to achieve that level. And it, like I said, it lists what the students should be doing. If that's where you're at, it lists what the teachers should be doing. It lists what the setting should look like. And I think the best part is every single one of these that you click on, there's multiple. I think it looks like each one has a minimum of 4. We've touched a bunch of them now, and I don't think one has less than 4, but they've all got 4 actual videos of teachers doing of sample lessons within or that kind of fit each of those intersecting points along the matrix. So it'd be really, really helpful to maybe compare what you do to one of these things to see if it looks similar to those sample lessons or not, or use it as a benchmark for yourself and something you'd like to achieve.
Also, if you just want to get ideas on teaching.
Yes.
I mean, there's plenty of ideas here. Like we're looking at active learning in the infusion level, and the 4 video lesson samples are magazine publishing, monuments and symbols of the U.S., culminating presentations, and using digital tools in the field. And all these are different grade levels. You have 6 and 8, K through 2, 3 through 5. And as you go through some of these, you'll see some of the higher level ones as well.
Another a really fun way to use this that I've enjoyed for myself actually is to pick one of the really highest levels of the matrix, like transformation or infusion. Those are the top 2, and challenge yourself and go with one of the environments that is most challenging to you. For me, I think that would probably be most likely the collaborative setting. I don't know why. That's just just something I struggle with. Well, this allows you to click within the collaborative environment up at those high settings, and now I've got just sitting there waiting for me not only the written descriptions, but like we were just talking about, the sample lessons. So I can actually watch teachers doing those things, and it sort of demystifies those higher level things, which when you read them can sometimes sound really difficult and almost scare teachers off. But if you can see someone else doing it, see some examples, it kind of, at least for me, it takes away some of that anxiety. And it's like, oh, that's not so bad. That's a really cool lesson. I can do that for my class in this way. And I think that's going to help some people grow a lot if they use it in that way.
Yeah, and if you wanted to take this outside of the individual-based professional development there, I think this is definitely something that could be taken on by a school that has recently or is going to implement like one-to-one technology.
Yes.
For all the students. This is beneficial because not only does it get ideas out there, but it tells you exactly how the teacher and how the students are in that environment. And I think that's very, very important. A lot of teachers, I feel, think that they're not doing their job sometimes if they're up there just walking around monitoring groups. If they're not up lecturing, they just feel like they're not doing their job.
Well, yeah, you hear a lot that's the I don't know if this is the right word, but that's the wrong way to be doing things, or your students aren't learning the best that way. So it does kind of not feel so good if that's what you're doing a lot of.
If you're an administrator or a teacher leader or tech integration specialist out there, the site, and it will be in our show notes, gives you a whole bunch of resources. They have presentations already pre-made, and they're very simple, and the graphics are awesome. You can use it, and they encourage you to use it on the site to reuse their materials and everything. So I think it's very cool when groups of educators kind of go out there and they make something and they want everybody to use it, and they give everyone permission to use it.
Yeah, this would be good too if you're in a PLC, so more of like a formal group of collaborators or like-minded educators at your school. If you're looking for a direction for the coming school year, something that your group wants to focus on, like Eric said, is for professional development for PD, this would be another really amazing tool just to kind of give you some ideas, and the resources are phenomenal. On not even just looking at the matrix itself, just the page or the website itself has a whole separate link full of sample resources, like Guy said, presentations. They've even got a link here called Tech Cartoons, DIY presentation elements, all sorts of handouts too. There's just tons and tons of stuff for people to check out.
Yeah, and one of my favorite tabs up there is the professional learning tab. It's all the videos that are in the matrix, but it's broken down so you can click on it by subject and by grade level. So I think that's also a neat tool there. But if you get a chance, go check out the technology integration matrix. It's definitely something to take a look at.
It's a good one.
It's time for the Tech Battle Royale! And we're back for another Tech Battle Royale. Last week we tied.
We did. It was a new event. Not sure how to handle the tie. Not sure how I feel about it. I guess it's better than losing. Although I am losing track of our progress with all these things.
I think from now on we'll just go with whoever won the last week. But since we tied, I will tell you this: we both held our heads up high in the hallway this week.
It felt good.
We definitely were both in a good mood because our whole world revolves around these Tech Battle Royales.
That's right. And I think. I don't know. How do we, I guess it doesn't really matter since we tied last time who spins or does any of that stuff. So.
No, I mean, I'll spin the wheel.
All
Why
right.
don't you just.
I'll pick the thing.
Yeah, you'll go through some of the categories maybe.
Sure. Yeah. So if you're new to the podcast, the categories we select from the spinner are productivity, video and screen casting, learning management systems, STEM, language, Google add-ons / extensions. We also throw in fun and games, history, research, spinner's choice, and I think the two best ones, teacher favorites and student favorites, a very unique category. So let's see what we get today.
All right. What is our selected category there, Nick?
Okay, it looks like we've got Google add-ons and extensions.
Ooh, this is a good one.
It's a very good one. Google, obviously, the whole Google platform, all the G Suite. There's tons and tons and tons of stuff. We could talk about it for years if we had to. There's so many things, and it's changing every day. I know I've got a big pile of these to choose from, and guys, I know you've got even more than me. So how about you kick it off this week and talk about your app? What do you got? Do you have an app or an extension? Or
Mine
where are you
is
going?
an extension.
Okay.
And it's actually brought to us by the EdTech team.
Okay.
It's an extension called Checkmark. Now, if any of you out there are familiar with Turnitin, I know I'm using Turnitin with my classes.
Sure.
But I often have teachers come up to me and say, hey, I just have like a simple reflection piece for my students, but I have 3 classes of 25 students, so I have 75 of these to do. And by making comments to every single one of these in the margins, it just takes so much time and so much effort. And is there a way that we could speed up this process? And the answer is yes. The answer is Checkmark. So Checkmark is an extension that allows you to basically hover your pointer over top of a section of text. So if a student is writing a paragraph and starts with a incomplete sentence or a spelling error, you can highlight a word, and when you highlight the word by dragging your cursor over the word, a selection of canned comments comes up, and one of them is SP. So you just take your mouse and it will highlight that word in the person's document, and off to the right it will say spelling error or fragment sentence or not a good topic sentence. But there's a list of canned comments which you can select from, and it's very quick. So you could go about as fast as you could read. You can go down, select certain things, and say maybe, it's just a feedback tool. And feedback is important nowadays, and you want to do this quick. So 75 one-page discussion topics can be pretty rigorous, but with Checkmark, it can make that time. It could save you time so you could be with your friends and family and do the things that you love.
There you go. I gotta say, it always sounded weird to me, the idea of grading, especially grading papers electronically. It just sounds like it would take so long, and doing it by hand and being able to write comments was always kind of the way I preferred. But man, I prefer grading and making comments and using some kind of tech feature like what you just described way better. I find it personally way faster.
Yeah, I mean, I could see how you like it. I just think I would like a hybrid method.
Sure.
I would like the opportunity to be able to grade them a little old-fashioned in that way. And I'm not sure how it would be handling 75 papers at one time if you could do that staring at the screen for that long.
Right.
But I do appreciate technology definitely making our lives a little easier as teachers.
All right, so that's a good one. Mine is this is going to be weird because mine's actually pretty similar this time. It's called Kaizena, and the spelling's a little bit strange on that. It's Kaizena, Kaizena. You can find information on this at kaizena.com. Kaizena is a very similar tool. It integrates with Google Docs flawlessly. So when you're editing in the Google Doc, just like you would add a comment to something that a student submits to you, where you highlight it and click the little comment button. When you install Kaizena on your computer, there's going to be an additional little icon there for Kaizena that you can click on. And when you do that, a little window box pops up on the right-hand side of the screen, and you can add comments, pretty much like you were describing. The only cool thing that Kaizena introduces is that there's multiple different types of comments you can leave, and this is my favorite part. The first one, and I think probably what would be my favorite part, is one of the options for the comment is actually a voice message. So now you don't even have to worry about writing something. If you're going old school, paper and pencil, writing your comment, so your hand's getting tired out by the time you're going through that stack of 75. You don't have to worry about clicking and typing anything in. Now all you have to do is highlight it and click the voice message option, and your microphone kicks in and you can verbally speak your comment, which I think is way faster. Something that we lose a lot, I think, with feedback is the personal element. If it's your voice and your students know you and you've built a good rapport over the course of the year, how great would it be to hear a positive tone in your teacher's voice as they correct you, instead of, I don't know, like that bright red pen that kind of brings on that stress and anxiety. Now you can really express more of a therapeutic or just
emotion.
You
can stress emotion.
That's what I'm trying to say. So voice message option, really cool. There's other types of comments as well. One of them is called a skill comment, which I haven't played around with too much. I think what it is if there's certain skills you want to emphasize, like transitions, if that's what you want your students to work on, you can highlight a piece and click the track a scale button, and you can rate your students on a 1, 2, or 3 scale, how they did with the transition you just highlighted. A 3 would be really good, a 1 would be not so good. It's supposed to, again, be a quicker way to say, hey, here's your transition. It was pretty good, so I'm going to give you a 2, but I think you could improve on this. And the last one, Guise calls it attach a lesson, which I think is kind of a strange term. Really, these are just your canned comments. So if there's a repetitious thing, or you start grading and you find that you're leaving pretty much the same comment over and over and over again, you can create this in Guise, call it a lesson, and then that just really quickly pops in without even typing or talking or doing anything. There is one more type. It's just a text message, really. So I think that pretty much mirrors just a regular comment that you could do with Google Doc in a Google Doc setting. But again, my favorite is the voice message element because of that personalization piece.
Well, I don't know what to say to that one because you have me covered.
Well, let's go back. Just remind me, what kind of comments can you leave with? I can't even remember the name of yours.
Oh, clever guy. It is Checkmark.
That's right,
Checkmark. I'm going to stand by Checkmark. I've
Yeah.
used it. It's very, very simple to use, and it's a very efficient tool, and it gets the job done if you just need to do something. I would say this is for more of the short-sighted papers that you don't need to worry about showing emotion to your students. And I agree. With technology, there's a lot of fear that socialization and just having the ability to verbally communicate gets lost.
It does. It can, easily.
And Kaizena, it sounds like it does. It keeps the integrity of that a little bit.
A little bit, yeah.
I'm going to give you the W for this week.
Yes.
And I hope you have a great week leading up to Memorial Day.
It feels like it's the best way to start it. A fresh win for me with Kaizena. I really do want to recommend this to people. And also just to comment on something you said, the whole personalization piece. By the way, I don't think you or I would recommend that any of this replaces just, pulling your students aside during class and saying, hey, can we talk about this? I think that's something that maybe gets glossed over with the technology. But if you're giving comments with electronically submitted stuff, at least you can bring in some element of that.
Yeah, and you really got to have some form of note-taking. And verbal note-taking, such as a conversation that is recorded, is good because the student can go back and replay it. And they could read stuff that you wrote down, obviously. But sometimes in a conversation, some of that gets lost as they move away from that meeting. So
right.
I think there's a benefit to have both the functionality of Checkmark and also Kaizena. But we'll give you the W. We'll let you do the victory speech for this week, and we'll have a new one out in another 2 weeks. If you want to get a hold of us, you can reach us on Twitter at We Got Tech, or go to our website at GotTech.com.
George William Curtis was an influential writer and public speaker of the 1800s who earned distinction for his influential works that championed patriotism, loyalty, and equality for all Americans. Curtis once said, "A man's country is not a certain area of land, of mountains, rivers, and woods, but is a principle, and patriotism is loyalty to that principle." So as we close out Teacher Appreciation Week and approach Memorial Day, I thought it fitting we apply the same idea to education. Perhaps a teacher's classroom is not a certain space within the school walls. With the help of technology, it extends far beyond. And if this is true, then a classroom, like a country, is more principle than physical space, comprised of the students, relationships, learning materials, and goals that exist in and around it. With this in mind, I would like to thank the teachers who challenge themselves every day to make the most engaging classrooms possible. Thanks for listening to Got Tech, the podcast. You can follow us on Twitter at WeGotTech or on our website, GotTech.com. If you've become a regular listener of Got Tech, we'd also like to encourage you to subscribe on iTunes or any other streaming service that you prefer. This will help us grow in the EdTech space, bringing our listeners, that's you, bigger and better content. Until next time.